domain 6, which is security assessment and testing. So we are going to look into the various forms of assessment, test, and first we're going to understand what exactly security testing is, what do we understand by security assessment, and what are the various kind of audits. We are also going to look into the various types of audit reports that is available for us in case if we want to evaluate any security posture for the organization, we might want to review those reports. Okay, then what are the various types of, how do we actually start the testing for any system or a network, right? What are the various forms? Then different types of testing we're going to see, and what are the various ways to conduct or facilitate security audits, right? Security testing and security assessment. Now, what exactly a security test is? A test verifies that a particular control is functioning properly. In case an application has certain control in it, we want to make sure that particular control is functioning properly. Now, the method of identifying these functionalities is called as security tests, right? There are various forms we can conduct the security test, like conducting automated scans can be done. There could be various tools that is available to penetrate the application and identify for any kind of issues. So that particular term we use for that is penetration testing, or penetration test means we try to penetrate into the application to identify if the controls are working properly or not. Okay, and manual attempts to undermine the security. We try to compromise the defense to see if it could be compromised by the bad guys. Okay, that is what security test is. Now, what is a security assessment? A security assessment is a more comprehensive review for any system, right? So a particular application is assessed and various kind of assessment is done. We try to find out various vulnerabilities in the system. We try to figure out what could be the threats. We even try to exploit the system's vulnerabilities and figure out if it can be exploited or not. And apart from that, we also provide a recommendation or remediation plans that how you can fix it. Okay, that is your security assessment. That is the only thin line difference between security test and a security assessment. A test is going to verify if the controls are properly working or not. So they might want to exploit the system's confidentiality or integrity or even availability, right? How the system can be, an attacker can take advantage of any misconfiguration of the control that you have implemented, and so on. Whereas assessment, it is more comprehensive review. Okay, so management is going to look into the details of the security assessment, because it also includes, and it is the report which is shared to the management, it doesn't include any kind of granular details. It just tells you what that this is a particular impact and this is a remediation that you might want to do to fix it. Okay, now what is security audit? A security audit is very similar to the security assessment, a comprehensive security review. It is similar. However, audit is performed by the independent auditors. An audit is always performed by an independent auditors. Someone who would give an unbiased result, who would apply an unbiased approach. Right now, there are two forms of audit that happens: internal audits and external audits. Now, internal audits are typically performed by your internal team or audit staff. Now, even these audit staffs are someone who functions independently. Like they normally report to someone at the CFO level, or even like there is a separate management of the auditing who doesn't have any kind of influence with any other functions. Okay, and who's the intended audience for internal audits? Majorly your internal stakeholders. Okay, it also act as your first line of defense for any kind of control gaps. Then we have external audits. Okay, external audits are something which are actually conducted by the external auditors. Okay, like your big fours, your EY, Deloitte, PwC, and KPMG. These are the external auditors which perform the external audits. Who are the intended audience for the external audits? We have the internal stakeholders, as well as there are some sort of regulatory requirement as well, which ask us or force an organization to go through a timely audit. Okay, now there is another term which is called as third party audits. Okay, now third party is something which is who performs an audit on behalf of any other entity, right? On behalf, so just in case you do not have a capability of performing the audits. You might want to engage any person, any organization who can perform the audit on your behalf, or there are audits which performs on behalf of other organizations as well. So all the third party auditors are your external auditors, right? The intention or the purpose could be different. Okay, now the reports for the external audits that has been performed, it is generally acceptable by your general public. I mean, even your organization and even multiple organization would be able to accept the standards or the control or the findings that have been provided by the external audits. The necessity of having a third party or the requirement for having a third party organization, third party audit is slightly different. It is majorly done for, so try and understand this way. A third party audit is something which is performed by an entity which performs audit on behalf of you or any other organization. It could be an external auditor as well. So even like your KPMG, Deloitte, or PwC, they are also the act as a third party auditors. Okay. On a high level, it is just an internal audit as well as external audit. Okay. So here we were talking about the third party audits, which are conducted by or on behalf of another organization, right? So for example, any regulatory body, let's say in India, we have RBI. RBI is one of the regulatory body which governs all the financial institutes, right? They want to conduct an audit on any financial institute. They might not themselves go ahead and perform an audit. They would rely on the findings on some external auditor or a third party auditor. They would ask any external auditor to perform the audit on their behalf. In that situation, it becomes a third party audit. Okay. A common third party audit that we for which the reports we heavily rely on is your statement on standards for attestation engagement, document 16. Although it has been superseded by document 18, which we call it as SSAE 18, but it is okay if you even know like SSAE 16 is there, it doesn't matter. Okay, so it is, they provide an audit report on the service organizations. Okay, what is a service organization? An organization which offers services to the customers, right? So these kind of audits are done on the service organizations to just to test the controls. Okay, and that is the reason it is called as service organization controls, or commonly referred as SOC. Okay, let's not get it confused with the word SOX, that is Sarbanes and Oxley Act. That this particular act is given for any kind of financial transaction, securities, bonds, and all these things. So that is Sarbanes and Oxley Act. This is your service organization control, SOC. Okay, a SOC has three different types of reporting, and it is very important topic from exam perspective. Very important. Okay, a SOC has three different reports: SOC 1, SOC 2, and SOC 3. What exactly SOC 1 is? It actually tests the controls for financial reporting. Okay, a SOC 1 report is going to test the control on financial reporting. Okay, SOC 2 reports are actually about the 5 trust principles. Now what are those 5 trust principles of, and when we say these principles, this talks about security and privacy. So what exactly are the 5 trust principles? Confidentiality. Okay, then processing integrity, or you can simply call it as integrity. Obviously the third one would be availability. Okay, fourth one is security, fifth is privacy. Based on these 5 trust principles, a particular controls on the service organizations are audited. Okay, SOC 2, not necessarily only SOC 2, even SOC 1 also has type 1, type 2. Now what is a type 1 report and a type 2 report? A type 1 report tests the design of the control in place, right? It actually tests the design of the control in place. And type 2 tests the operating effectiveness of those controls. So whatever the controls that the organization is claiming to have, how effective they operate, that is what type 2 is. Now duration for type 1 is point in time. So whenever I'm going to ask for any type 1 report, it means I'm going to ask for April 2020 or December 2019. That is point in time. A type 2 report is commonly for a period of 6 months to 1 year. So if I'm going to ask for a SOC 2 type 2 report, people are going to give me for the year 2019 or from April 2019 to March 2020. It has a period of 6 months to 1 year. Okay, so SOC 1, it talks about the controls for financial reporting. So any organization which actually processes the financial reports, right? That is about the SOC 1. SOC 2 is on the security based on the 5 trust principle. Type 1 is design of the control in place and it is point in time. Type 2 is operating effectiveness of the controls and it is 6 months to 1 year. Okay, the SOC 3 is exactly like your SOC 2. Exactly. The only difference between SOC 2 and SOC 3 is SOC 2 is a much more granular report. It could vary from like 200 pages could be there. And SOC 3 is just one page, which is very high level, that it tells, it is just a certificate that tells that a particular organization has gone through the stringent audit requirement for SSAE 18 or 16, the standards which are provided by AICPA, and it has successfully met all the requirements. That is all the high level detail. SOC 3. Okay, SOC 1, SOC 2, SOC 3. These are the three types of reports into service organizations control. Now you might have a question, where do we use these reports? In which requirement we should use these reports? Now this is the chart that can help you in identifying which SOC report is right for you. So when a customer, will the report be used by your customers and their auditors to plan and perform an audit or integrated audit for your customers' financial statements? If the answer to this question is yes, which report is suitable for you? SOC 1 report. Okay. If the report would be used by your customer as a part of their compliance with Sarbanes-Oxley Act or any similar law. So Sarbanes-Oxley Act, it is again financial reports and transaction. If the answer is yes, it is again going to be your SOC 1 report. If the report is going to be used by your customers or stakeholders to gain confidence and place trust on the organization systems, right? In that case, it would be SOC 2 or SOC 3. Okay. Do you need to make the report available for general public? If yes, it would be SOC 3. In case if it is needed to understand the details of it, of the controls, right? If yes, then SOC 2. If no, it would be SOC 3. Okay. So just in case if you are responsible for evaluating the security posture for any cloud service provider for your organization, let's say you are a cloud security professional and you want to evaluate a security posture for any third-party cloud service provider. So what exactly you would ask for? You would ask for SOC 2 or SOC 3 report, right? Normally, organizations might not be comfortable in sharing SOC 2 until unless you sign a NDF with them. Otherwise, SOC 3 is generally available, right? So this is where, because a cloud service provider is going to offer services to you, and whatever the claims on the controls that the service provider is making, you might want to verify whether those claims have been audited or verified by some third party or not, right? That is the reason we ask for SOC reports. Now, what happens when audit goes wrong? Now, we discussed briefly about Big Four while we were talking about our KPMG, EY, PwC, and Deloitte. So do you know, before we had Big Four, we also had Big Five. There was an organization called as Arthur Andersen. Have you heard about that organization? Arthur Andersen. So there was an audit on one of the organization in United States. It was on one of the energy and power based organization, I mean in an energy sector, right? And that energy company, it filed for bankruptcy, right? And just because they had taken so much money from the stakeholders and customers, and they filed the bankruptcy. Well, and that particular organization was audited by Arthur Andersen, right? And Arthur Andersen, and once that it was audited, a particular, I mean there was some kind of money embezzlement and frauds were happening in that organization, and this report was provided into the media, and then a separate audit was started on that energy sector, and they realized there was no as such bankruptcy. There were certain frauds that was committed which was missed by the auditors, Arthur Andersen, right? Once that fraud was identified, the license for auditing was taken away. Okay, because Arthur Andersen was responsible for auditing that energy company, and they did a big mistake by giving them a clean check from the fraud that was happening. Okay, and the license for auditing that firm was taken away. At that point of time, it was the biggest among the 5 companies for auditing, Arthur Andersen, right? And then it was reduced from Big Five to Big Four. Now, do you know Arthur Andersen is still being operated under a different name? Which organization is that? You must have heard about the organization, right? Accenture. So whenever an audit happens, it is very important that we give them carte blanche. Okay, carte blanche is a French word which simply means complete authority, complete access. Now, whenever an audit happens, it is very important that we support the auditors. See, they are here for our help. They are going to provide us all the necessary information which is there in order to help us fixing the control gaps. They are going to provide us the what are the gaps that is there, and they are going to help us in fixing those gaps. In case if we hide something from them, they would be left with no choice but auditing something on the limited knowledge. So it is very important that we cooperate with them and provide as many information as they ask for, right? And normally people have a fear from auditing that they are going to trouble us, but it is not. In reality, they are here to help us. So it is very important that we provide them complete access to the information that they need in order to perform the audits. Okay. All right. Vulnerability assessments. What is a vulnerability? It is a weakness in the system, and once that weakness is known to the attacker, they would try to exploit it. So what is the best way? Let's try and identify that weakness our own before it gets to the attacker, because if we have identified the weakness before, we would be able to figure out a way how to fix it, right? So what are the various ways to perform the vulnerability scans? Network discovery, then we have a network vulnerability scanning, and then the web scanning. These are the few things that we use for performing vulnerability scans. Okay, now let's quickly check how does these things work. Okay, network discovery is going to help you to identify what all are the open ports into the application server or to the IP address, right? And if they have figured out an open port, they are going to identify what all are the services which are running behind those ports. Okay, so they are trying to discover, they're just trying to scan the network to identify the ports and what are the necessary services. Now imagine if your organization doesn't use FTP, any kind of FTP protocol, file transmission protocol. They do not, your organization do not transmit any files, but they still have the port 21 open. What is the point of it? If we do not use these services, we might want to close it. Otherwise, it would give away an access or a gateway for any attacker. They would try to figure out the services running behind and try to exploit the vulnerabilities in those services. Okay, the common method for performing the network discovery is TCP SYN scanning. So remember the handshake that we had between the client server, SYN packet, it would have the SYN ACK, and then it would be ACK packet. Okay, now a TCP SYN scanning, what it would do, an attacker would send a SYN flag, and if the system responds with SYN ACK, it means it is accepting the connection, right? It is also called as half open scanning. Why it is called as half open scanning? Means it is not completing the scan. The intention was just to figure out if the system is responding or not, right? Then we have TCP connect scanning. Okay, TCP connect scanning, it means attacker completes the handshake and opens the connection to a specific port. An attacker is going to establish a full connection to a remote system on a specific port. Okay, then we have Xmas scanning. Now Xmas scanning, when what exactly they do, an attacker is going to send a packet with various flags enabled, like finish, push, urgent. These are the few flags which are going to be enabled into that packet. Now it is said that packet with so many flags, it lights up the system like a Christmas tree, and that is the reason it is called as Xmas scanning. Okay, so these are the few methodologies which are used to identify any open ports and the services. Now a common method or even a tool, Nmap is also a tool, as well as it is also one of the commands for network discovery, right? Nmap stands for your network mapping, right? So whenever you actually do a Nmap on any network, it is going to give you a couple of results like your open, closed, and filtered. Now in case if it is sending you a result as open, it means a port is open and application is actively accepting the connection. Okay, and closed means port is accessible but the application is not accepting the connection. Okay, and filtered means the tool is unable to determine whether the port is open or closed. Might be because of the firewall is interrupting the connection, that is why it is trying to, the connection is being filtered out, so a tool is not able to determine whether the port is closed or open. Okay, so this is how we are able to determine whether a particular port is open for a system or not. All right, then we have network vulnerability scanning, whether we have actually we do have any open ports or not. Now it takes a step ahead than the discovery scans. It actually tries to identify if there are any vulnerabilities available on the network. Okay, so tools which is called as your Nessus is there, then there is a Rapid7. These are the tools which are going to help you in identifying any vulnerabilities on the network, right? Now what is an authenticated scan and unauthenticated scan? By default, these tools perform unauthenticated scan. An unauthenticated scan is going to provide you the result till the time it reaches to the system, right? Till the time it reaches to the system, and it is not going to give you any details or any kind of vulnerabilities which might be present beyond this system, right? Because the connections were not being authenticated. Whereas an authenticated scan, it is also going to go beyond the system and try to find out a lot of vulnerabilities which can actually be exploited. Okay, so by default unauthenticated scans are there, but the intent and the right practice is to perform an authenticated scans just to give a realistic view, just in case if an attacker has compromised the system, what worst it can do. It is good to have an authenticated scans done to avoid any kind of false positives or false negatives. Now I hope you all know what exactly we understand by false positive, true positive, and false negatives and true negatives. Okay, just in case if you want to draw a table out of it, it would be easy for you to understand. Think all the trues as correct. Okay, think all the false as incorrect. Okay, something which is positive, it means correct, identified. Okay, something which is negative, it is rejected. Okay, now let's say your system is telling that it is a malware, but in reality it is not. So what exactly system did? It incorrectly identified a malware. It means it was a false positive or a false alarm. We say, right, it is a false alarm. Okay, a true positive is something which is correctly identified. Let's say a system identified it was a malware, and in actual it was a malware. It means it was correctly identified as a malware. Okay, in that case it is true positive. Something which was supposed to be rejected, it means, let's say I'm trying to authenticate to a system. Okay, I'm trying to authenticate to a system. I'm not an authentic user and the system rejected me. It means correctly rejected. I was correctly rejected. Okay, and something which was incorrectly rejected, that is your false negatives. Okay, so just to ensure that we have an avoid any kind of false positives or false negatives, right, we should be able to perform the authenticated scans. Authenticated scans is just going to provide us a much better understanding of the system's vulnerability. Okay, well, with this we complete domain 6 as well. All right, take care of yourself, study hard. Thank you everyone.